Hey, what's up, comrades? Hope everyone's doing great. So we're here to talk about Overlord Light Novel Volume 11, which focuses on dwarves, which are dope. And these, like, I don't know, I call it mole people. I think they got described at some point. But they, like, crawl through the ground and eat metal to become stronger and stuff like that. But you don't spend too much time on them, right? It's like everything else in this series. Everything moves at like a mile a minute, and we get introduced to characters and get their whole backstory and like all this important stuff, and then they're dead. And so it's like, how much attention am I really going to fucking pay? Right? I think it's great. I love it, but yeah, it's not really that important to the overarching story. So, you know, if you want to get all the nitty gritty details, then go get the books. It's a normal thing. So we start off in the prologue with a dwarf. He's mining and he's saving up money so that he can get white iron. I could have sworn he said white iron, but then that never comes up again. Like at some point later in the book, Ainz is talking to somebody about metals in the area, but I don't think they even say white iron ever again. But apparently it's super rare and it's very excellent. And the guy wants to bring back some lost technology utilizing it. And that's the important thing. The lost technology is the important part to remember, because that lost technology is going to help them make very powerful items. All right, then the book officially begins. Ainz is thinking about the vassalization of the empire, how the leader of and then he's thinking about how the leader of the Dwarves is like a rune caster, and Ainz wants to check out this rune technology, see what it brings forth. He then gets a note from Entima that Cocytus is sending a message. He also thinks about what everyone is doing, so we kind of get like a recap of like all the different things that people are involved in. And he decides that he wants to head over to the Dwarves himself, and that the vassalization stuff, like in the end of the previous book, he's just going to leave to like Demiurge and Albedo to kind of like figure out, and then he'll like stamp his approval once it's over. He does decide that on his adventure here, he's going to bring Aura and Shaltir, and then he's going to put Aura in charge of Shaltir as kind of like, you know, finally Shaltir is allowed to go out and do things, and this is like her test to see if she's like recovered fully or if there's still any lingering like negative energy or whatever from that world item that was used on her. And just in case they run into like the player that, you know, just in case, right? Like the advantage of Ainz or, what's his Japanese name? I forget. It is that he's very cautious, and that allows him to be a very good leader because he like prepares, like overly prepares for everything, and that's why he was a good guild master as well. He then goes He then goes and meets with the messenger of Cocytus, and it's Z's brother, the chief guy. He gives his report about how Z and Lulu have had a child, so that's good because he wants to make a lot more lizard men that are like special, like the white ones and stuff. They then talk about the dwarfs and how Monk Guy like lived with the dwarfs, right? And that they can use that to their advantage. If you remember all the way back to like, I think it was book 4 was the lizard men, like shown in anime. Starring the lizardmen, but they lose at the end. He spent a large time, the monk, you know, he left and then he wandered as like what do they call them, travelers or whatever, and then he spent a long time with the dwarfs, and that's where he got like the thing that lets you give like unlimited booze or whatever. So while that's all kind of getting figured out and they're getting prepped, like Aura and Shaltir and Cocytus with the monk guy, Ainz visits Pfluger and the guildmaster from Arantil. And he just wants to talk to him about dwarfs, what a dwarf's like, dealing with dwarfs and whatnot. And neither of them has that much information about the dwarfs. The dwarfs have been pretty insular for a long time, and they used to trade a lot more with the Empire, but they have kind of come into disfavor with that whole situation. He then heads back and calls Shaltir and Mari. Shaltir and Aura. Shaltir and Aura meet up with him. He explains the whole plan to them, and they discuss how this is a diplomatic mission and that Shaltir's there just like in case, because Shaltir's like she's like a powerhouse, right? She does a lot of damage, and she's one of the best fighters, if not the best fighter in all of Nazarick, right? Just pure strength. And so they want to bring like a sizable entourage, as this is like, they're like, hey, I'm a king now. I want to entreat with the king of the dwarfs. And so we've got to make it like a big deal. But first we're going to meet up with the Lizardman village, so that they can pick up the monk and he can like guide them how to get to the dwarfs, because no one really knows how to get over there. After Ainz leaves to go prep some stuff, Aura and Shaltir talk about how Shaltir's doing, and that Aura thinks about how she feels bad for her, and that this is, you know, she's almost like a little sister to her, because that's literally kind of the case, right? Because she's got like a funny name. The girl who created Mari and Aura, it's like Happy Pocket or something. her little brother is the one who created Sheltir, so that kind of bleeds through with all that. Anyway, so we pick up at over at the Lizardman village. Ainz is meeting with Cocytus and the rest. He congratulates Z on having his son. And they talk about living in harmony with humans, goblins, and lizardmen, and creating a nation where all races can live together in peace and stuff. And then he talks to the monk boy about the Dorton experience, about what he was like over there. Does he remember how he got there? They chat about it for a little bit, and the monk gets concerned that Ainz is going to go over and conquer the Dwarves, and he feels like that's betrayal. And Ainz is like, no, it's just a diplomatic mission. He's like, all right, well, if you promise, I'll take you. At some point, Cocytus is like trained himself to be a chair like Sheltir all the way back in the Lizardman arc. And so he wants Ainz to sit on him, and he's like, okay. And then he wants to know who's better. So he's like, well, Sheltir is better because she is a sexy vampire loli. But Ainz is very nice about breaking that to him. And Cocytus is like a hard-shelled lizard, while Sheltir, though a loli, is still soft-ish. So they travel up into the mountains. Monk tries to lead them, but it's been a long time. But Ainz doesn't care. He has this whole like internal monologue about how great it is to like go on adventures, and he thinks back to Yggdrasil days. And now there were whole guilds that would just like travel around and explore and stuff. And at first he didn't get it, but like doing this, he like loves this, and he thinks more about how he wants the Adventurers Guild to just go out and explore and find new things and discover things, and how great it feels. At some point, it starts to get late, so he summons like this giant fortress. Like literally a giant fortress. It's kind of like if you ever played Dungeons & Dragons, they have like those items that let you build like a tent. It's like Teldas's tent or something like that. And there's the cabin and stuff like that. So it's like this. This is like a horrifying tower of like darkness with like gargoyles and stuff, right? Because it fits the theme. And it's like, all right, everybody get in there, get some rest if you need it. If you don't, you're undead. You can just chill like Sheltir. He then takes the monk in there and he tries to check his memories because he's trying to figure out how to get there, right? And the monk doesn't quite remember. And Ainz has like developed a way to like delve into people's memories without messing them up, but it takes like a lot of mana and it's like very taxing, so he can only do it for like a short amount of time. But it doesn't really work, but it's fun that we have a little side story, I guess, about that. The next day or the next couple of days, the monk finally kind of like figures it out. And then they get to an entrance, like a large entrance to like what appears to be the Dwarven town, or like goes in, announces Ainz to be there. There's no answer. There's no one around. Apparently the whole place has been like abandoned. So they search and search and search. And then Ainz sends his like ninja bodyguards to find a guy. The ninja bodyguards report that they found a guy who's like digging all by himself. So Ainz and Aura go to check him out alone because they don't want to freak him out too much. And the guy's the dwarf from earlier, right? He has a name. Did I write it down? It's like Gorath or Gregan or something like that. Anyway, so Aura talks to him about Ainz for a little bit and he's like very concerned because she's a child, like a dark elf child, right? That's what she looks like. And she is by their standards, right? It's not even that she looks like that. It's that she is kind of like a child. And so he's like, oh, I got to protect you and take you out of here. And so they move to another location. Or he explains the Dwarves all left and went to like a different location, a different kingdom, because of the mole people were like attacking here, and they were being supported by like ice dragons or something like that along those lines, like some sort of not Dracoliches, right? But like frost. I think they call them frost dragons. And that the planet says someday they'll come back and push the dragons out and all that stuff, but it's been a long time. And that he's here and he has like this cloak that makes him invisible and allows him to run away and stuff, so he doesn't have to fight mole people or the dragons. And he wants to get some stuff here, like we learned about in the prologue, so he can revive an old technology. They then start heading out, and then Ainz reveals himself, and they start talking about runes. Runes is the old technology he wants to reveal, which is convenient because that's also the technology Ainz wants access to. And part of the advantage of runes is that it's like, they're super cheap. It takes a while to like establish the runes, right? Using like whatever technology the Dwarves are using, but they're very powerful, and they're super cheap. Like, doesn't take a lot of resources to do it. While like enchanting the way they do things now, more commonly like in the Empire and stuff, is very expensive. And part of the whole thing that Ainz is doing with his empire is that he's trying to plan. It doesn't come up a lot. It's not like Spice and Wolf, which is fucking excellent. But the economic stuff does come into play, and they do talk about it a bit here and there. Okay, so as the humans began enchanting their own stuff with just like base magic, the dwarfs ability to sell like runic weapons and runic items kind of slipped away. And so then people became less interested in it and the craft started to fade away. So this guy's been working on a way to mass produce runes to increase its efficiency or increase the speed so that they become like it's cheap and efficient, right? So it's very good. So, and then a better way to like utilize them and stuff. And he wants to bring it back. He like cries about it, talks about how his dad was one of the greatest rune crafters of all time, and that he did, and his grandfather was, and that he tried and tried, but he was never able to get that far. And Ainz establishes like, video game logic. He's like, oh, he's like a level 2 rune crafter, and that seems like his max capabilities. Right, or level 1, like it's really low key. So he can like do it, but he doesn't do whatever. But he's very passionate about it. And he's tried to get the guys who are actually good at rune crafting to be passionate about it, but they're all kind of just like, what are you going to do? And Ainz gets very hot into this idea. It's like, yes, we got to do that. I'm going to get these guys. They talk about it for a long time. Everyone believes it's like a dead art and stuff, but he wants to revitalize it. We learn about that. And so Ainz is like, I want to patron you, and I patron all the rune crafters. I want to bring them to the Kingdom of Darkness and do this thing. And so they talk about the Regency Council. So it's the last King of the Dwarves died. There's been like a Regency Council with each of like the major political groups of the Dwarves kind of like having a voice and whatnot. And that this guy is like, I will vouch for you, and we can talk to the rune crafters and talk to them and stuff. And so then the three of them meet back up with Sheltir and all the others, and they discuss how the mole people are around. And then someone, like one of the ninjas or something, is like, oh, it seems like there's like 100 or so. And so Ainz is like, Sheltir, go over there and capture them all. Don't kill them. So, and this is like a test for you. And so Sheltir and Aura, because Aura's in charge of Sheltir, so she's going to go as like the supervisor, right? Because he runs this kingdom like a Japanese corporation. And so they roll up on the mole people. And then Sheltir just like decimates them. But she captures a bunch too. And then she starts charming. She charms one of them and interrogates them, finds out that there's a leader that's united like all the mole people clans, and that they're currently like on their way to go attack the dwarves. So they come back and return a report, and then Ainz decides that he needs to head up there and help because that'll get the dwarves indebted to him, and then he can get the rune casters and take them back to the Kingdom of Darkness without any beef. At this point, we get an intermission, and we finally meet like the elves, the actual elves, right? So the only elves we've met are like the dark elves, Aura and Mari. And there's Evil Eye, who seems like she says she's a vampire, but I almost feel like she's like an elf vampire. I don't think I really met anyone. Oh no, we met those elves that the guy was like raping in his little group from the, what did they call them? They weren't called hunters. There's the Adventurers Guild, and then they're workers, the workers group from like book 8 or 9, I want to say. And the Elf King is like a real asshole here, but he talks about how like he is also considered demi-human, and so he's had to deal with like crap with like the theocracy and all those other assholes and whatnot. Anyway, back to the dwarves. We actually go to the Dwarven War Master, who's, I got kind of confused here. It seems like the mole people are attacking a fort, but that they already took over a fort, but then there's like a bridge between the two forts, and there might not be the secondary fort on the other side, is what I kind of gathered after time. I thought they took over a fort, and then they were crossing a bridge to attack another fort, but it seems like that first fort is just made up in my head. Like when I was like listening to the book on tape, it just kind of like, I like made it up or whatever. So where we see like the head of the Dwarven like army here, like prepping and getting ready for like this, and it looks like the fort's about to be breached, and then guys are talking about defenses, and then they talk about that maybe the moles have help, and maybe there's some more shady stuff because normally the moles don't get like all hot and bothered and all this stuff, and then they get a message from an undead guy who wants to chat with them about something, and they're like, holy shit, what? Like, and like when it rains it pours, right? So they're going to go check it out. And meanwhile, that undead guy is Ainz, of course. So Ainz and crew follow the dwarf. I've wrote down Gondo. I think that's right. And so Gondo takes them like out of the caves because the moles are like in the way of the caves, so they want to let us come behind them. And they go up and on the surface, and they bypass the whole mole invasion and then come back down where like this fort is. And then while this is happening, all the moles that Sheltir captured takes them to Nazarik's thing to do experiments on them and stuff. So the Nine meets up with the dwarf leader here. He requests, they show up at like the entryway, and they're like, I want to see your leader. And there's like, who are you? You're just some undead guy. And the Gondo's like, no, he's here for real. I'm here. I'm a dwarf, blah, 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 blah. It turns into an argument about drinking and where they're drinking. And I was like, what the fuck? They then go and get the Supreme Commander, who's the guy from like the previous like chapter in the book. And Ainz wants to help them defeat the mole people that are currently attacked them. So then we go head over to the moles, and there's some mole man who's like the hero. And again, it's one of these things where we get this whole backstory and about how he grew up and how he's like united the clans and eating metal to gain powers and something. And then they have a fight with the dwarves and how they fought with the dwarves, but they also fought with each other. So this hero is able to unite the clan. So that's what makes him like a true hero, and that they're ready to come and finish the dwarves off. And that they also pay, there's stuff about the frost dragons and how they pay like a tithe to them essentially, or they like subservient to them. And the right as they're about to like do their final push and destroy this fort, 2 Death Knights just like wander out and they kill everybody. And then the mole people are able to like not be completely slaughtered to the last man because they drop the bridge into the depths, right? And it kills all the mole people. It also kills the Death Knight. So back with Ainz, he is like, oh, the Death Knight should have that easy peasy. So they just like lock the fort down and then start heading out immediately to the dwarf capital and meet with the council. And the supreme leader, war leader, is like going with them because he's a member of the Regency Council. At some point, Ainz senses the death of the Death Knights, the destruction of the Death Knights already done. And he's like kind of freaks out a little bit. He's like, wait, is someone able to destroy those Death Knights? And these mole people shouldn't have any capability. Like think. He doesn't spend too much time on it. He's like, well, I'll go deal with that later. But he considers it might be a player because the player could easily, like a Yggdrasil player could easily destroy them. But he also considers like, well, maybe they fell on the bridge. I'll investigate it further later. He meets up with the council and they discuss opening trade routes and using undead for helping them with mining and help with trade. And talks about the empires using it and how his kingdom's been using undead because they can work forever and they don't need to sleep. And part of that is like, the trade routes on a caravan, you're going to have guards and all this stuff and wagons with animals. But with undead, you can just like, it's like YOLO, whatever. They can just do it all. So dwarves get like very like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Maybe we should do that. So they go back and forth a little bit about all this. And then they want help. Get the help and trade and missing they want their old capital back. Yeah. Ainz is like, well, I just want to do the trade thing, but I guess I can do that. That's fine. Also, I want the rune crafters to visit his realm, but I'm not going to force them to do it. I just want to go propose it to you, but I want you guys to not stop them from coming if they want to come. And then they get concerned about him enslaving them. And he's like, no. This is like completely voluntary. And then the dwarfs like want some time to talk, so he leaves. And one of them is like super belligerent about it, but the rest of them are on board and like, look, motherfucker, we need this, like, so make it happen, especially if he gets our capital back. Ainz then gets invited back in. They agree to his proposal, and they talk about enchanting and such, and the rune works and all that stuff. And he talks about no one in Nazareth can do the rune crafting or the enchanting, it seems. So that's kind of like the problem. They talk about making some armor for the monk guy. And something about, so there can be like more, or he wants to make armor for Z, and so Z can be protected. So when he's out doing stuff, he can come back and have more like white lizard babies, which are like more magically inclined and stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, we can make armor for him. And he's like, cool. So here's like a chunk of like, here's an ingot, do it with that. And they're like, sure, we can figure that out. So they give it to like the head of the crafters guild or the smithies guild. Great. All right. And so he's like, I'm going to go visit Gondo. And they're like, oh, no. We want to put you in like the nicest hotel in the area. And don't stay at like some shabby guy's house or not. And Ainz is like, really wants to talk to Gondo about the rune crafter and stuff. But he's like, all right, I guess that makes sense. I'm like, this is a diplomatic mission. I got to be diplomatic about it. Meanwhile, though, Gondo is out gathering all the rune crafters together. So then Ainz comes and asks them he's like, hey, can you make a weapon with like 20 runes? And like, that's impossible. 6 is the max. And then he pulls out a sword with 7 runes on it. And they're all like, oh my God, damn, fuck. And then someone's like mentioning like the king, I think the king, he was the greatest rune crafter of them all. And he had like a hammer with like 8 runes. His might've been the thing with 6 runes. I wrote 6 max. So maybe that's why I wrote that, but it's like a lot. And so this is like almost as much or more than, right? And they're like voracious about wanting to learn more and craft the arts, and they all get like inspired to be rune crafters again instead of being lazy assholes. And so Ainz invites them to come stay in the Kingdom of Darkness, and they're like, yeah. And later on, Gondo talks about the council and how like they should try to get the council's like blessing, not just like allowance, essentially, that they should. And that'll make everything smoother with like diplomatic stuff. And then he gets, Gondo gets very sad, talking to Ainz about how like the dwarfs don't care about their culture, about their history, all this stuff. And Ainz is like, you got to let that go, man. Like, what's more important is like the dwarfs or is like the rune crafting, right? And so he's a little sad about it, but he's happy that the craft can continue and the technology will grow and that he's going to go in to help with all that stuff. So Ainz and crew go with Gondo to head back to the old capital. And once they get out of like the city, they see this huge massacre. Like once you get to like the fort, right? They see the bridge collapse and that there was huge massacre. And Ainz at first doesn't put it together that they dropped the bridge with the Death Knights. He's still very concerned and being very cautious. And then they talk about Shaltir leading the way, and Shaltir and Aura talk for a little bit, and they like come to the conclusion like obviously the Death Knights fell down the bridge. And Ainz knows that, like, the master knows that, but he's trying to test us to see if we can figure it out or whatever. And so okay, so then we head back to the council as they're like traveling to go fight these mole people. And the council's getting ready for death or war or something, and they're talking about how Ainz is gone. They're kind of relieved to have settled all that very well because he was such an intimidating presence. And then one of the guys goes to check on the Smith guy who no one's seen in a little bit, and he finds him just like sitting quietly staring at the ingot that Ainz gave him. And he talks about, he like throws it at him. The guy's like, "Oh, you're going to burn me." And it's like, "No, I can't heat it up. Like, it doesn't get hot. It doesn't do anything." They talk about this, and the guy's like, "All right, man, well, good luck figuring it out and try to get this armor done because we need it." And then we get like shortly thereafter, or like the next day, the guildmaster was like never seen again, and neither was the ingot. He like took it and like ran off in like his madness or to like figure something out. It's like the dwarf leaders are like, "Fuck." We then get like a little breakdown for like the travel of Ainz and crew to get to the dwarf's capital, and it seems like that where he was before was not the dwarf capital. It was like part of it, but they're trying to go to like the dwarf capital, which is very dangerous because they go through like poison swamps or something, which has no effect on anybody but like Gondo. So he just makes like he uses magic. I think a monk too. He's a little susceptible, but he might be immune to it as well. Then we kind of head back over to the mole people, and they're trying to figure out what to do about the dwarves. They decide to elicit help from the frost dragons. So then we get like a little premiere or primer about the dragons, how they work in this world. There are a bunch here in the dwarf capital. They're like very patriarchal. They'll be like polygamous, right? So the head of the mole people guy, he goes and talks to them. He pleads for help. The Dragon King's like, "All right, sure. Why not?" He talks to his dragon wives about it, and they suggest that one of his oldest son go. And his oldest son is like a magic nerd who's like fat and wears glasses. And he's just in like a library of this area, just like reading books and stuff. And so they argue. He said he's doing research trying to improve dragon magic and stuff. And the king is like, "Ugh, my nerd son, I hate it so much. Why can't you be more like my other sons?" And blah 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 blah. And he says, "Oh, I'm very strong, just not in like fighting and stuff." And he's like, "That's all that matters. We're fucking dragons, yada yada." And it's like, "I'm gonna send you to go take care of the doors. Just fucking take care of it." And the Dragon King is like, "Maybe if he dies, that's fine, and if not, like he'll prove himself to actually be of value, so that'll be great as well." So that's pretty funny. All things considered, like fat nerd dragon. All right. And so he preps to meet with the intruders. He doesn't really want to fight, but he's going to like try to spook them and stuff. So he rolls out, and then when Ainz and crew shows up, they negotiate. Like he immediately like pees his pants pretty much, and he's so intimidated. And he's like, "I'm sorry, I'm embarrassed." And Aura's like, "Gross." And so Ainz is like, "Look, you're going to take me to your father. I'm going to take care of that, and you dragons are all going to join forces with me, and I'm going to take all these mole people, and you're going to give the city back to the dwarves." And the dragon son's like, "Got it." High fives all around. So he joins them, and then he gets put under Aura's care because Aura's like one of her main jobs in Ozariq is like the master of all magical beings, right? It's just like Hamski's under her too. Okay, he takes him to the father and the three queens, and the Dragon Queen immediately tries to fight Ainz, and then Ainz like kills him immediately with like a death spell. And then he's about to kill the queens too, but they all claim to be the nerd dragon's mother, because he was like, "Oh, can you spare my mom at least?" And Ainz is like, "Yeah, I don't give a fuck, sure." And then they're all like, "Oh, they're all claiming to be his mother." And then Ainz looks at him and he's like, "Is this one of those situations where like she gave birth to you, she raised you, and she did something?" And then the nerd dragon's like looking around, and he's like, "No, that was not the case at all, but maybe I'll be nice." And so he's like, "Yes, that's the case." And he's like, "All right, I won't kill any of them. That's fine. Bring everybody here." So he brings all the brothers, like all the other dragons that like have been the other spawn dragon. And while they're doing that, Ainz goes and checks out the dragon treasure with Gondo. Oh, he also gets someone to take like the dead king dragon to go experimentation and stuff, maybe turn him into a Dracolich, who knows. So they find a lot of good stuff, a ton of gold. They find a sword that Ainz can't use without magic, and then they find a box. And this is very interesting because they like, "Oh, he uses like a magic key or something that only has so many uses to open the box." And he opens it up and he's like, "Ooh," and we never find out what's in the box. Well, at least in this book. So it's kind of like, okay, just forget about that. It's not that big of a deal. We then pick up, while they're doing that, Aura and Shaltir are like hanging out. Aura's using a world item to show like scenes of nature or something, and it's because they're going to take care of the mole people, right? Since Ainz took care of the dragon. So this thing creates, it's called Scenes of Nature. I said Scenes of Nature. It's called Scenes of Nature, and what it does, it creates like a pocket universe essentially, where the only people that can come in or out are the person who created it and the people that are specifically acknowledged. So like Aura's creating this world, so she can leave, and then she invites Shaltir in, and all the people that are trapped in her, like all the mole people, and it's like an illusion. The whole thing's like an illusion, right? And that anyone with a world item, and this has come up in books before, is immune because this is like a world item, so world items like cancel each other out, and right? And there was like a whole thing about how the devs created the world, and they created these items, and they're like, "Oh shit, that's not what we wanted to do," and so then they made it so other people with world items would be immune to them. Okay. And this is where they have the conversation about the Death Knights and everything, and they kind of figure out that they fell to their death, and it's them, Ian's being kind of like concerned, quote unquote, that there is more to it, which is like a trick to get them to like think for themselves and decide. So again, it's like one of those things where Ian's is like he's like very concerned like in real life, but it comes across as like a test that they need to figure out. And since they're kind of like smarter than him in a lot of ways, that he's not that he's a dummy, right? But that they kind of like figure stuff out on their own, or they're like more battle hardened, or they like are more trained in this. And so they kind of like figure out like the real answer before he even figures it out. So they also talk about what to do with the mole people, and they're like, okay, there's like, I can't remember the numbers. It's like there's 100,000 of them. So they're going to save like 10,000 men, 20,000 women, and like the children, right? So maybe like 30,000. So they're going to save like half of them. It's less than that, but that's roughly what they're going to do. And the rest are just going to get slaughtered, right? And they're going to take the rest and bring them into like the Empire or the Kingdom of Darkness and stuff. So it's like, okay, it sounds good. Call them all. And so then they go out, and the hero comes out to like parley with them, and Shaltir just like, she rolls out in like her sexy red blood armor, and she's like, all right, here's the deal. We're going to save this many people. The rest of you are going to die. So I'm going to give you opportunity to choose who's going to live and die. And the guy's like, no, we will not do that. And so she just starts massacring like them without like, she's not smiling. It's just like, and the guy compares it to like, it's like a meat packer. Like he's just like doing his job, going down the assembly line, killing people, just complete massacre. Like it's so efficient. It's like, it's not even a slaughter. He then weeps as he knows his people will forever be subjugate to this new master. There's nothing they can do to stop it. Back over with Hines, he's learning about the moles. So this is like after the slaughter and everything. They head back over. He learns about the whole mole situation from Aura and Shaltir, and stuff. And he's like, all right, good, sounds good. And he learns about the metal eating and all that stuff. And then we head over to the Dwarves. They are super concerned that the guy that fled will give, and that Ainz is going to be pissed and want revenge or whatever. So they're thinking about they give him whatever they want, and then they're going to apologize. And so when Ainz like shows up, they do that. They've made an armor out of adamantite for the monk guy and for Z and other things. And so Ainz is like, he forgives them on the occasion. Then he forgives them on the condition that they announce to everybody that the runesmiths are coming over to the Kingdom of Darkness to like do their crafts. And then again, it's not slavery. No one needs to get upset. It's just like the council's like essentially sending them. So it's more of a great thing. And so they do, and everyone has a big party and a good time, and they're all drinking and laughing and stuff. And then Ainz speaks to, while this is all going on, Ainz goes to his tent or like his room that he's staying in, and summons up Demiurge and Albedo. Not like to them, but he's like speaking to them. They talk about the vacillation of the Empire and about his plans. And then something comes up that he's establishing like a 10,000 year kingdom. And he's thinking about it because they're talking about the expansion and everything else, and him being undead. Like a lot of empires might fall because people die, and you have like dummies who come in later. And then, it's one of those things again where it's like at the very first book when he's talking to Demiurge, looking at it's like, oh, maybe I'll take over the whole world. And Demiurge is like, oh, yes. So he says something about like 10,000 year kingdom, huh? And then Demiurge and Albedo are like, 10,000 years, that's amazing, my lord. Yes, we will do anything to make that happen. And he's like, oh, God damn it, I let it slip again. And so we find out that Demiurge is headed out to do like quote unquote something that we'll find out about in the next 2 books. So like the next arc essentially is 2 books. And that Ainz will play a role in that as well, but Demiurge is going to go set stuff up, and then Ainz will come in a bit later. We then hit an epilogue as this book is about to wrap up, and we pick up like several months later with Henri in the village. She and Inferi are now married for several months, and they've been boinking, so we get a little of that. And then we get some like fan service of her like walking around naked with her massive breasts and like taking a shower and stuff. She thinks about everything that's been going on, about how the village is doing, and how the 5,000 goblins was like super stressful and a big problem, but then they kind of like figured it out. They're able to like expand out, and that they're using the goblins not just for war, but for like cultivation and hunting and gathering and all that stuff. That everything's kind of settled and everything, and that they had to take a loan from Nazarick. And the loan was like, I think it was like apple trees and stuff. Like it was a bunch of like food stock, but then they've been able to kind of like get their agricultural situation like very good, so they should be able to pay it off in a couple of years and become even again. And then thinking about how Lupus Regina is now like the official governor of the area, because now this is like an official kingdom and not just like a city that they were like associated with, since the city that Ainri like runs, she's the headmaster of, is part of like the Arantel region of like the Orestes kingdom. So now that he's taken over this whole section of the kingdom, of the Orestes kingdom, the King of Darkness, it's not part of his kingdom. So Lupus Regina is like officially like their governor at this point. She thinks about how like, all the self-sustainment stuff, the food loans, and they're almost ready to like live on their own merits. And then all of a sudden Regina just like pops up. she's like, hey, I got to go away for a while. And she's going to help Demiurge with his stuff. And she's like, so be careful. And then she's like, what, why do I need to be careful? And then she's like, because Ainz has been killed. And that wraps up book 11. So excellent as usual. And go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I'll catch you guys later.